Alright, welcome back to our PowerPoint lessons. So in this lesson we're going to talk about, it's kind of a combination between some graphic design, but more about just manipulating shapes and objects within PowerPoint. Now this is a great way for you to, for example, design a logo. If you don't have access to a vector based graphic design suite of software, you can do plenty with PowerPoint. And so I do a lot of design work using just basic PowerPoint, whether it's business cards or logo design or graphics. You can do a lot with the features that are built into PowerPoint. And so we're going to do a few little things here just to practice. And so I'd like you guys to all follow along in PowerPoint just so you can kind of do the steps as I'm doing them. And so what we're going to do is first we're going to learn about creating navigation buttons. So if you are designing a interactive PowerPoint or an interactive slideshow or presentation, you're going to want navigation buttons, right? And so these can be forward, back, home, next, continue, begin, start, anything you want. You can have any sort of button. Now, using hyperlinks, as we discuss in the hyperlinks and interactive lessons, you can do all sorts of things. Right? You can navigate however you want. This one is going to be specifically about how to actually manipulate the designs and to make them in the first place. So we're going to come over to Insert, and the first thing I want to show you guys is that you have this button here called Icons. And if you click on that, you have a ton of free icons from Windows. And the great things about from Microsoft, the great thing about these icons is that they are fully. Not only are they searchable, but they're also, you can change the color of them, so you're not stuck with a single color. And so, for example, we'll take this shell and this shark, and we'll click Insert, and they will come in exactly the same size onto the current slide that I'm on. And if I select both of them, we can just turn them into gray shapes, and we can give them a shadow. So you can do a lot of cool things just with the built-in icon feature in PowerPoint. So it's important to know that these icons exist, and you can do a lot of very simple graphics using these, and these are just included with PowerPoint, so you don't need to worry about licensing or anything like that. These are part of PowerPoint. They're just free icons. And it's great. There's tons of them, so you can, nature, and you get all these nature-related icons. There's tons of icons that you'll find in here, and I use them a lot. And so, for example, if we type home, we get a nice home icon. If we type, so I'll select that one, and I'm going to type back. I get a good back icon. We'll take this up icon. Do we have anything for start? We have a play icon. There we go. So we'll insert those 4 icons, and as you can see, you can select more than one of them. Since I've got them all selected together, I can also change the size of them as one group. So I'll put them all at 1/2 inch. And so now this is a very simple way of just creating a simple navigation system, right? So we can put our home button wherever we want, maybe in the center on the bottom. So just align this to the center and hold shift to keep it aligned to that center. And we'll put it down low there. And everybody knows what that symbol is, people are used to that. And then we'll have maybe a play symbol up here and like a back and then an up, option. Now, this is just something that you guys should be familiar with. We'll get into customizing these a little bit more later, but I also want to teach you guys how to make these on your own. So what you'll note is up here, when you select them, by default it will change to the graphics tool because this is coming in as a graphic. You can do a lot of stuff with this. You can change the fill color, right? So we can select all of these and we can make them this dark blue. We can give it that drop shadow that I was mentioning, right? Now they look more like buttons. When it comes to experience, the user's experience, having a little drop shadow might help people realize, oh, this is a little button, this is something I can push. But you can also convert it to a shape, right? And so the cool thing about the graphic is that you can change it, right? So directly from here, I can select, this is the wrong graphic for play. Let's get a different one. Let's use, I don't know, maybe we want to change it to this checkbox. So it just straight up changes it like that. I'll undo that. But what if we wanted to do something more with this, something extra? What if we wanted to make it part of a circle? What if we wanted these icons to be inside little round circles that looked more like buttons? So that's what we're going to practice first. So to do that, let's take our, we'll start with our home symbol and we'll do a basic one first. You can get rid of the shadow for now, just so we can focus on the actual icon itself. Now we're going to start big just because it's easier to work like this. We can always resize them later. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle. It doesn't really matter what color it is for now. Let's make sure that the house is in the front, so we'll bring it to the front. And we'll just select the circle and the house and align them to the center and to the middle. And so now that house is exactly in the middle of the circle. Now, when you have an object selected, if you hold Control while scaling a corner, it will lock the center point and only scale it. It'll scale it in all dimensions, but it'll keep the center in the same position. And so this is a nice way to make sure that your midpoint stays the same. Now, keeping that in mind, you should note that you don't always want to keep things perfectly in the center. For example, if you look at the physical dimensions of this icon, it is perfectly centered on the circle. However, if you click away and just look at the shape itself, it looks like it's too far to the bottom. And that's because the distance between the peak of the roof and the top of the circle is exactly the same as from the bottom of the house to the bottom of the circle. However, it feels like it's heavier because there is more stuff down here at the bottom that gets closer to the edge, while as the house up here, the roof goes away from it. And this is going to happen a lot, and so you need to be able to identify that just by using your eyes and looking and seeing what feels right. Sometimes icons will feel more heavy to the left side or to the right side. So just don't be afraid to move your icon off the center if it needs to be. So in this case, I'm going to hold Shift because, again, Shift is going to lock it onto our axes here, right? So Shift in PowerPoint is going to lock it either on our X or on our Y axis. So I'm going to lock it there, and I'm just going to move it up a bit. And another way you can do this is just using the arrow keys on your keyboard to get it where you want it to be. But what you don't want to do is just move it around like this, right? Because now you're moving off your horizontal midpoint. So you want to make sure that that horizontal midpoint is staying the same. So if you're going to use your mouse, you should hold Shift to keep it locked on that midline. And if you're not using your mouse, you can use the arrow keys. And so you'll notice that if I move it up towards the top, now it's definitely more to the top, but it looks more centered. That's what we're going for here. All right. So that's great. So here's one way we can make an icon. So let's say we wanted this icon to be, I don't know, a dark colored icon. So we'll select the shape in the background and we'll make it like a dark gray, and we'll select the house in the front and we'll make it like a white. And so now we've got these two separate things making this nice icon, but we want to group them together to have them be one single thing, right? So you can see in the selection pane we've got a graphic and an oval. So let's go ahead and right click, group those together, and now we can resize it to be out, and you'll notice it's squishing. That's because I forgot to hold Shift. If I hold Shift while I do that, it locks that aspect ratio, which we want. Now, once I shrink it, I notice that the house is actually a little bit too big. It's not giving the circle much room to breathe. I don't know if you can see what I mean, but I decide, sometimes when you look at something big, it looks a bit different when you look at it really tiny. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just, even though it's still in a group, I'm just going to hold Control again and just make the house a little bit smaller inside the group. And there we go. So now when I hold Shift, that to me looks a little bit nicer. I might even go a little bit smaller here. And again, if I hold Control, let's go big again so I can see it more easily. So yeah, I hold Control and we can shrink that house down even more. Maybe that's a bit too much. Let's see how that looks. Holding Shift. Yeah, there we go. And so there we go. So now we have a nice little home icon. All right? Looks pretty good. And you guys, again, with hyperlinks, we'll go through that later. Just note that you can't hyperlink groups. So you'd have to hyperlink first the circle. You can hyperlink that. And then the icon. You can hyperlink that. And then both of them together will hyperlink to the same place. That is all fine. And that might be all you need to do. And as mentioned before, if you decide that you want to have this slide look like so, one of the kind of tricks and easy ways to do, to save yourself from having to work too much, is go ahead and make a copy of that. Let's get rid of the house, Actually, you know what? We'll keep the house there for a second, and I'm just going to move that over there and make another copy. And by the way, to make a copy like that, I'm just holding Control. So when I hold Control and click and move, it's creating a second copy. And if I hold Control and Shift, it just easily makes me able to slide the copy to the right while locking it horizontally. So it's not sliding up and down, it's just moving to the right. So you can make many copies as you want like that. And then you can adjust them using Shift to keep them on that same line. The reason I'm leaving this one over here is because I'm actually going to click into this and remove that house. And I'm going to do the same for this icon. So let's bring this to the front. And we'll get rid of the shadow. Shadow, no shadow. And we'll make it white. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can kind of compare, you know, roughly the size over here of the house to my little arrow. So that's looking like it's reasonably similar. And once again, I'm going to start by just arranging and aligning them center and to the middle. And then I might make adjustments. So this one looks like this part looks like it's very close here, but there's a lot of space here. So I might actually move this one to the left a little bit. Until it looks good. And that's all right. And then again, I'm going to group them together. Group. And let's make one other one. So we'll make one for, we can delete the house now. Move this over here. And we'll do one for this guy. Just so that we have kind of everything set up nicely. So go shape fill. Bring it to the front. Bring to front. And let's set the size nicely. Now with these icons, you don't need to hold Shift when adjusting the size. They're perfectly locked to scale, which is nice. And this one is a bit weighted to the right, so I'm going to move it a bit to the left, and maybe even a bit up. And that looks pretty good as well. And let's group those, and then these two, we'll just hold Shift. And remember, if we don't hold Shift with that, we're going to start skewing them, because now they're in groups. Oh, and another thing to note, if you come to Format, you have your height here, right? So this group is set to 5 inches, or, sorry, half of 0.5 inches. Oh, I also noticed I have an outline on that. I don't want that. No outline. So come to Format, and you can actually select. There we go. So my circle there is 0.5 inches. So I'm actually going to make sure these are the same. So no outline, and we'll set it down to 5 and to 5. And so you see again, because it's not holding Shift, you can move these independently. Sometimes that will not work. Sometimes it will keep it locked, but other times it will move independently. So there we go. And now I'm just going to kind of position, you know, these buttons where I want them. I'm using the automatic red lines to make sure they're lined up properly. And you see there now the distance from the left side of the home button to the home button and from the right side to the up button are now matching. And so now I can see I've got this nice thing. And then by holding Shift, I can select this group and just decide like how close I want it to that icon over there. And guys, once you get this done, what would be a good advice would be to set up your hyperlinks. So you can hyperlink this button, hyperlink this icon, hyperlink this button, and hyperlink this icon. Do the same for all of these. And then, very easy, copy all, paste. And what this means is that as you transition between slides, your navigation buttons are in exactly the same place every time. And you also don't have to go and recreate those hyperlinks again and again and again. So, or you can right click and duplicate, right? Now, things like the home button or the chapters menu, you don't want to have to do those hyperlinks over and over again. So set them up one time and then duplicate your pages or paste that icon across all of your pages. Sometimes for the back icon or the up icon, you'll have to get into some custom work. But again, you can kind of do it one time per section and then paste that for the whole section. You also have some other, when we get into hyperlinks, we'll discuss that a little bit more because there's some custom hyperlink stuff that you can do. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted you guys to practice. But now we're going to take it a little bit to the next level because, you know, this is cheating. We've been using the built-in icons, and what I want you guys to get good at is making your own because there's a lot of stuff you can do. So if we wanted to make our own home icon, what would we do? And so, actually, you know what? Before we get that, there's one other thing I can show you with this. So, let's say, for example, that we have a background. So let's change the background color here to like a dark blue or something. So you'll notice that our icon is white. Now our icon is white because that's the color that we set that icon. But it doesn't need to be, actually. That icon could have negative space inside it. Instead of having white here, it would actually just be the circle with a house cut out of it. So the way to do that, if you would like to use negative space icons, is very easy. So firstly, let's go ahead and we can get rid of these. We don't need that. The first thing we're going to do is come over to our group of our icon. And you can actually select, you can ungroup it or have it grouped, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup it for now. So you'd select your house, and the first thing we're going to do here is convert to shape. Right. Now, it looks like nothing has changed, but what's changed is this is no longer an icon. This is now an actual shape, and as you can see, it's a group. It's actually a group of two shapes, this funny shape at the top and this funny shape at the bottom. We couldn't do that before. If it was just an icon, I'll just copy and paste this icon. This one is an actual icon. I can't ungroup it. I can't do anything. It's already a single icon. I can't separate these things, and when I move it like so, it moves in one group, in one scale. This one allows me to do all sorts of wonky things by moving it because it's no longer an icon, it is now a shape, right? So again, with this thing, we're also going to go ahead and ungroup that because we don't want those individual things showing up separately. So now we have three items here. We've got this shape, we've got this shape, and we've got this shape, all right? And so to make that negative space icon, we're just going to select this first one and this back one. We're going to come up to Format, and we're going to look for Merge Shapes. This is a very powerful tool that nobody seems to know about or use. Union combines them together. You can just, if you experiment with all of these, eventually you'll figure out how they work. I will say they are a bit funky. Like, it's a bit weird to figure out how it works. And so in this case, for example, it looks like we're going to be looking for combine. That seems to be the thing that is what I'm aiming to do, to combine these shapes, right? And it looks like the top shape, right? Right now, this house shape is on the top layer. So it seems to be pulling that color. But again, don't worry about that because we can change the color later. So I'm going to click combine, and then I'll just set my color back to normal. And we'll send this to the back because I want to point out that that house, that the roof of that house is still there. That hasn't gone anywhere. But you can't do this with multiple things. You have to select two shapes. So that's why we had to start by selecting just this and the circle behind. So again, I just undid to go back a few steps to show you what I'm doing. So again, I'm selecting just this first shape and the background shape, Format, Merge Shape, and in this case I'm doing Combine. Then I'm going to set my color to dark again, and I'll send this to the back so that I can see that roof again, and I just repeat the process. So I select the front shape, the back shape, go over to Merge Shapes, Combine, and there we go. And so now I have my own custom-made icon that is see-through. So this thing in the front, if I hold Shift, I keep it in that same aspect ratio. By holding Shift, I can keep it locked. I can also just set the size by going to Format. So let's set it to 0.5, 0.5. There we go. Oops, don't want to type on top of it. And now I can put it in that corner, and you'll notice I've just used the underlying home icon to get it in exactly the same spot. I'm now going to right-click, Send to Back. Send to Back, and I'll delete this one in the front. And now I can change that color. And so now what happens is you've got the same icon here, but it's got the see-through transparency ability, which is quite nice. If you wanted to use this on your website so that your website matched your presentation, you can actually now save this image as a PNG directly from here. So if you are wondering how to make your own custom icon with, and export that as its own individual thing, you just make it nice and big or have it fill up a whole slide, or you can even make a custom PowerPoint presentation just where you're designing your icons, which is what I would recommend. And you just select the thing that you want to export, save it as a picture, and tell it to go out as a PNG. All right, and by doing this, your transparency will come through. So I'll just save it into Downloads for now, and then I'll just open Downloads to show you that this is working indeed. And so there you go. So I've got my gray transparent background icon. If you want it to be blue, you just make it blue, like no problem. The colors can change. So save as picture, save it as a PNG, and once again, there it is, my blue transparent background icon. So this is how you can custom make icons. This is how you can custom make transparent PNG icons and how to export them from your PowerPoint presentation. Delete those. Now, again, with hyperlinks, you should note that this is literally negative space in here. There is nothing there. So you cannot, if somebody clicks on this house, they won't actually click a hyperlink. If you were to hyperlink this to, for example, let's say I was to hyperlink this to the next slide or to the first slide, you'll notice that that symbol only changes when I'm on the gray. Oh, well, we're too zoomed in to notice any difference. Hang on, we're zoomed out. Let me go up to the top here. Yeah, there you go. You can see that now. So in the middle here, my mouse doesn't change. That's because there's no hyperlink here. This is negative space. It only changes when I get to this edge here. And then we see that this is a clickable icon. There's a way around that using invisible shapes that I tend to use just because it makes it so much easier. It's also better for touch. Rather than having this thing itself be an icon, be a hyperlink, I would actually just insert a giant shape over it so that this whole area becomes the hyperlink. So now I would hyperlink this one to first slide or something, get rid of the outline and get rid of the fill. And now anywhere over that area, this whole block becomes a hyperlink. And this is good. You know, people have, different sized hands. So for touch devices, this is a really great way of making it easier for people to get what they want. And it means you don't have to go through and hyperlink individual icons. It's just you add invisible icons at the last step. And again, you can still copy and paste those across your slides to save time from having to do lots of work. All right. So the last step from today is going to be manipulating shapes to make our own stuff. And so let's just try recreating some sort of home icon ourselves. So first we'll just steal this circle because I already have a circle here. Yep, hold shift. Remember to hold shift to keep it in a circle. And now we need some other shapes. So to make it easy, I'm going to use blue blocks. And we're going to take no outline for now because once you start combining these, you don't want an outline. Right, and so what we need to do is make a house. So let's get going. And I might make a slightly different design than what is over here, but let's see. I want to show you guys how easy this actually is, doing this kind of stuff. So the first thing we need to make a house is one of these, and we probably need a triangle for the roof. So let's go get a triangle, decide what angle we like. Good enough. Again, make sure there's no outline. And now, again, I'll remind you, they do snap together, but we want this to be in the middle. You see how those red lines tell me that that's now in the middle? Once it's in the middle, again, holding control, I can set the overhang of the roof. And I don't want to move it off of the middle, right? So hold control to move one edge so you can have the sides or the tops go evenly. We're not going to do the top and bottom because, of course, we want to set that overhang. So I might set it to something like that. And if you want to change the height, just zoom in a little bit. And this orange thing is in the way for me. I don't want that orange thing there. All right, so to set the height, you're just going to have to use the bottom one, it seems, with this triangle. Nope. This will determine your slope. And again, I'm holding shift to keep it locked on this axis. If I don't hold shift, it's very possible that I could just move it a tiny little bit off to the side, and then my icon's going to look really funny because it's not a centered roof. Right? So just be careful when you're moving these things around. It should become second nature to hold shift when you don't want something to leave a midpoint or a center point. All right? That's pretty nice. Let's go ahead and add a door. So I'm going to add another shape. And again, I don't always have to come up here to shapes. My door is a rectangle, so I'm just going to copy, I'm going to copy this rectangle, paste it here. I'll make it a different color for now, just so I can more easily see what I'm doing. But it doesn't really matter what color it is, because it's all going to change later. So let's get a rough door first, so something like that, high, yeah, that looks pretty good, maybe a bit more narrow. And now again, I'm actually going to take this first group that I like so far, I'm going to group those together. And now I'm going to center these two groups. So I want my door to be in the middle. I've already got it snapped to the bottom. And I could just use my mouse to drag it to the middle like so. But let's just be extra certain. I'm going to select these two. So I've got the group behind and the door in front, and I'm going to align center. There we go. Now there's no question that my door is not in the center. I'm going to copy that door, and this time I'm going to make a little square. So let's call it 0.5 and 0.5. So now I know it's square, but 0.5 is too big, so I'm going to hold Shift to keep it in its same aspect ratio. So it's now stuck as a square. Whatever the height and the width are, they will stay the same because I'm holding Shift. If I don't hold Shift, it's any shape. But if I hold Shift, I can lock it to that square. So it doesn't really matter how big that square is. I'm just doing design work here. And you'll notice what I've done here is I'm seeing these little red symbols that's telling me it's nice and equally distant between the door and the side of the wall. Now I'm just going to, once I've got that in the right place, I've lined it up with the top of the door. Looks nice. I'm going to click it, hold Control and Shift is just to lock it onto this horizontal line. And I'm just going to drag a copy over here. And now I'm seeing those 4 lines telling me, yep, everything looks the same, everything looks good. I'm going to let it go. I might make my door a little bit taller just to make it a little bit more unique now that that's done. And maybe just for fun, I'm going to give it a little chimney. So let's just give him a little smokestack here. And again, we can get rid of that outline. We don't need that. Yeah. This one doesn't matter so much because now we're going a little bit off-centered with this one. So I'll just center it over that window. Right. Beautiful. Lovely little house made of different random shapes. Very easy to do. Takes a few seconds. First thing I want to do is ungroup everything. So I want to make sure that this is all ungrouped. And then, step by step, I'm going to take all these shapes and combine them into one. So the first thing we need to realize is that the gray shapes that I've made here, I'll make them orange, these are going to be cutouts. These are going to be negative spaces. And the blue shapes are going to be positive spaces. So I need to add these together. So this is very easy. Again, let's start with the triangle and the roof. The chimney and the roof. So we're going to select both of those, come up to Merge Shapes and Union. And so what that's done is that's now created a single shape from that one shape. And now I can change it and everything, and it's going to all behave as one shape with a little funny thing coming out of it. Just going to Control Z to get it back on where I put it. There we go. And that's done. Easy. So I'm going to select the bottom of the house and do the same thing. Merge Shape, Union. And then don't panic. Your windows are still there. It's just they're behind it. So you need to right click, send to back, and there your windows are all still there. But your house is now a single unit. And again, it's one solid shape that you can manipulate by itself. Okay, so for our windows, you guys should now know what to do. We're going to select and let me just try. I don't think you can do this with multiple. Oh, you can. There we go. So because these are fully on top of the house, we can actually just select all 3 of them and then the house underneath, merge shape, combine, and voila, our house is done. It's got its holes cut out. We can set it to whatever color we want it to be. Let's make it white. And now we've got a beautiful white house icon on a dark circle. And I'll go ahead and align those 2 up now. Align center, align middle. And we'll make the house a bit bigger by holding Control and Shift to keep it locked at its current scale. Because if we don't hold Shift, this is what happens. You see? It's all wonky. And we hold Control because if we don't hold Control, then it scrolls up and to the right. So Control keeps it locked on the center. Shift keeps it locked to its current aspect ratio. So we'll take those 2, group them together, and then we'll set the whole thing to, what was it, 0.5? There we go. Our own custom-made home icon. Looks pretty good. The background color could be a bit different. Let's change it to a nicer, darker, lighter gray, softer. There we go. Now again, this is the same thing that we did before with our first button, and so now you guys should know the next logical step would be, what do we do if we want to cut that out of the circle and make a negative space icon? Well, you should already know how to do this because we've just done it. Just create a copy, make it big. So again, we'll just ungroup it for now. Select your thing in the middle, select the thing in the back, merge shapes, and combine. That's it. Now you've got your negative space icon that you've customized entirely yourself. Just be wary that once you start combining and merging shapes, that's it. You can't get I can't get this window back. I would have to undo all the way back in time to be able to make adjustments to my house again, right? And at a certain point, you're going to run out of undos. So one thing that I suggest to do is to kind of like have a bit of a workspace, like a blank canvas where you're doing your work. And then when you're, finalizing your icons or finalizing your logos, you can kind of make a copy of them, move them to a new page, and then from there you can kind of do all your merges and your combines and anything that you want to do to kind of finalize your icon and your work. Simply because that way, if you do want to, like in the future, if I say, you know what, I don't like that chimney, I want to get rid of it, you don't have to start from scratch again. You can just go and find your icon on another page, remove the chimney, and then recreate it again, but not from scratch. So that's the brief introduction to doing basic design work with PowerPoint. And this is pretty much only limited by your creativity. And so, you know, if you were doing buttons or icons, you're not limited to doing this all inside of a circle. You know, you could do this inside of a rounded rectangle. You could use this as the base to make a frame for a logo or an icon for your website. There's all sorts of things that you can do using PowerPoint's very basic shapes, right? So here we've just very quickly, just by, you know, selecting into that, copying that icon that I have up here that I saved, we can now make a slightly different version of this icon, right? So now we've got a rounded rectangle version just in a few seconds. You know, it doesn't have to be long. There we go. So these are all some just little helpful tips and tricks, and so hopefully that this has helped you guys get some idea of the sort of things you can do. And just to wrap up this lesson, I did promise that I would teach you guys how to make a simple desktop background with some logos and some font. And so this is very, very simple stuff. So we're just going to go to a blank slide here. I'm going to remove all of this stuff on it. And to do this, we're going to need three things. We're going to need the logo of your company or your website. We're going to need a text box, and we're going to need an image. So for images, I'm just going to use a stock image. And one of the best ways to get that is to go here to Get Add-ons. And I'm going to select this one. And the one that I strongly recommend is Pixels. I think this is how it's spelled. Yeah, Pexels. Sorry. P-E-X-E-L-S. Free stock photos. These are awesome. You just agree to this, continue, and now it's built right into PowerPoint. You don't need to download anything. It's just right here, ready to go. And where is it? There it is. Get started with beautiful free photos. So this is an add-in that can be added to PowerPoint. And when you do that, you now have this button right here. And I can search Cambodia. And all of these images are 100% free, right? So let's go ahead and click on that image. And it's just going to go in. Now, we have another lesson on image manipulation. But I'll just very quickly go and full frame this. So I've just gone up to crop, and then I've selected these black icons and holding Control to be able to move to left and right at the same time, which you guys now know. I'm going to move that to the edge until it snaps, and then I'm going to select Fill. And then I'm going to hold Shift to keep it vertically centered, because I don't want it going left and right, and I'm just going to move it up and down until I have a nice crop that I want. So in this case, I think the sky is looking better than the water, so we'll do more sky in this case. It's just personal preference. And then we can add your logo, your website, your watermark, whatever. So in this case, I'm going to use the Fauna in Focus logo. So I'm going to go Insert Picture on this device. I'll go up to our graphics folders where we have our logos, and we'll install, we'll use this one, I guess. I mean, you can use whatever logo you want. And we'll just put this as a very little small thing down here. We'll select a nice little area for it. And we'll go to Insert Text. And so we'll make a text box. And let's say we'll do the website for now. Right? We'll make it light text. Light text is usually going to work better for a dark image. And we will add this drop shadow to it, even though this might not show up. When we have a light image, it'll be useful to have that as well. And you probably have font for your business already. If you don't, you should. And so we'll use a Fauna in Focus. Oops. Shoot. There we go. We'll use a Fauna in Focus font here that we already use for most of our stuff. We'll set up a nice size for it. And then, whoops. Remember about Control Z. I undo all the time, constantly. We're going to align the text to middle. That's important here. And then we're going to align this thing to our little icon. Now when you do this, you'll notice that I can't actually stretch this down because this is a text box. I made a mistake. What I should have done is used a regular shape and started typing in it. This is a much better technique to writing in PowerPoint. This is something that I always recommend people is don't use text boxes, use shapes and then make the shape invisible. So we're just going to use the same thing. We're going to do loose spacing, and we're going to go up in size, and we're going to align the text to the middle. And the reason is because once we align it to the middle, I can now set this top and bottom exactly where I want. With this one, you can't do that, and it's very annoying. You have to press enter if you want this to go on. Yeah, and it does funny things like that too. So we're going to get rid of that. So we're going to align this bottom to the bottom of our image there, of our little icon. We're going to align the top to the top. We're going to align the left to the left, and then we'll bring this over. We're going to align this to the left in this case. And that's looking pretty good. And let's go ahead and remove the fill for the shape. No fill. We'll give that text its drop shadow. And we can maybe just use the arrow keys to move it a little bit to the right, and we don't need any outline there. And you'll notice, again, sometimes this happens. This text, the way this font works, it's not quite centered on my icon. And this is a very minor detail, but it is something that you should bear in mind. So I do this with my eyes, but if you guys need help, this is a little helpful trick that you can use. Just draw a shape or a line and stick it right under your text, right? And just look at what part of your icon it hits, right? And so we can even get really obsessive here and measure the distance, right, between it. So there we go. So we've got basically from the bottom of the text to the bottom of the icon, we've got that much space. But if we move this up here, the thing is it looks like it's too low because most of the text is small. Only these F's are tall. Right? And so that just makes it feel like it isn't vertically lined up. It's a very small detail, but it's just something that you can kind of look at with your eyes and see. And so now if I was to copy this and drag it up, you can see that this gap feels like there's more empty space above it than below it. And so if we wanted it to center just using your eyes, you can just pop it up until it looks a little bit more like that these two gaps are about the same size. And so in this case, we now have the bottom of our text is going to be, I'll zoom in here. Bottom of our text is about there, and the top of our text is about there, and that's pretty centered. You know, oops, I just moved the background picture, so I'm going to Control Z to undo that. When moving this kind of stuff, make sure that you select the edge here, this border, and now I can use my arrows. And that is now very centered on this picture. And so I can remove these two things, and there you go. Now my www is like smack on the middle, even though my block is a little bit higher. And there you go. And that's how you would create a nice little desktop background with your website or your NGO name or your project name. And now it's a simple matter of right-click, duplicate slide. I'm going to select both of these, duplicate again. I'm going to select all 4 of these, duplicate again. And so now in a few clicks, I've just created a bunch of different copies of this. And now I can just simply come through and change the pictures out. So let's just go ahead and add some more pictures. I think that's a white-handed gibbon or a lar gibbon, so not a Cambodian species, but you get the idea. So for each one of these, I'm just going to format, crop, hold Control, select the edges and drag it to the edge, and then fill. And then holding Shift, I'll adjust the vertical angle as well. Boom. All right, let's go to the next one. Right-click, change picture. No, sorry, I made a mistake in the last one. Once you're done with that, right-click, send to back. Oh, never mind. I already deleted it. So you have to remember to delete the picture behind once you get your new picture in. So we'll go Insert. You can just on Pexels here, you can go back. We'll do Cambodia again. And we'll do this, let's see. We'll do this guy. And again, so I'll just go ahead and delete that rear image first. Format, crop. I'm going to hold Control, select my edges, bring them out to the edge, and then fill that shape and hold Shift and bring it, I think in this case we're going to bring it up actually, just to get a nicer crop, and right-click, send to back so that our text comes in the front. Let's go to the next one. And we'll install, let's do this nice beach. And we'll go format, crop, hold control, move the edges to the edge, crop, fill, and holding shift we'll adjust get more sky in this. Right click, send to back. We'll delete our front picture there, and that's good. And there you go. I mean, this is how easy and quick it is to create a set of professional looking desktop images, which you can use for your presentations. You can have these just on the back screen when nothing is going on. At least it's, promoting something. And you can put whatever you want here. You could have an event featured that's just sitting around and just have it set as your desktop background. And, it doesn't have to look like this. You can put your logo in the middle. You can have it, set up where there's a line to the center, and you do something like this, right? I mean, you can do it however you like, and then just duplicate that slide to have that consistent look. The consistent look, though, is important, right? So, yeah. Don't be careful about putting font on top of font. So, like, if I was to use this one, this might be a little bit odd, simply because we've got text on top of text, and it looks a bit confusing. So, be careful about that. I'm assuming that you guys would be using your own photos or photos of your, from your NGO or from your project. So this is just an example of how to, put images in, but you can also just insert and find pictures on your computer and just browse for them as usual. Yeah, and if you want, you can just straight away from these pictures, you can we'll have a whole separate thing on manipulating pictures. So yeah, you can edit the colors and make adjustments so that the text pops out more on certain images. Okay, I think that's going to wrap up our kind of customizing icons and making custom shapes in PowerPoint. I hope you guys learned something new, and don't forget to experiment and practice on your own.